Hi, and welcome to this episode of Dyslexia Solutions. I'm Dr. Marianne Cintron. I have a very special guest today. He is a pastor at Westside Christian Fellowship in Leona Valley, West Palmdale. And I'm very excited to introduce you to Pastor Shanej Idleman. Will you come onto the stage?
There we go. How's it going?
Hi,
Dr. Marianne,
welcome.
great to be on your program. I love what you're doing and helping people.
So Shanej spoke at one of the men's meetings that my husband attended called Band of Brothers, and it was very interesting. My husband is the eyes and ears to see if people talk about dyslexia, and
Right.
Pastor Shanej did, and that is why we have this connection. And I just wanted Shanej to come on today, introduce himself, but I also have a few questions I'm gonna ask him where he can share about his journey, and I believe it'll really bless you, and I hope you listen to this podcast until the end. So Shanej, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit to our audience?
Yeah, my name is Pastor Shanej Idleman. I'm in, like you mentioned, Los Angeles County, actually the far north end of Los Angeles County. And I mean, long story short, throughout school, it was challenging. And I didn't know why. You think you're stupid maybe, and you're just not, you can't measure up and you can't keep up with the kids. There's nothing I did on purpose, it's just, and I didn't really know what was wrong. I still didn't know what was wrong until probably 15 years ago or so. Somebody mentioned something and I started to go online and, top 10 characteristics of having dyslexia. When you know it, every single one of those points made sense. Now I understand why I had such a challenge in school, such a challenge with reading. And if we're not careful, self-esteem can be really crushed, especially as a kid, because you start being called stupid or lazy, or why don't you know this? And your mind is not working the same as everyone else's. But as a pastor now, looking back, I can see how it was just God used it to really break me and humble me, which is good. But also I think it's a gift in the sense that you're gifted to do something different. So what I do, and having to struggle to really read well and to write well. Now I write books, if you can believe that. That's the funniest thing that's ever happened. I just laugh. But because of that struggle, there's self-discipline, there's hard work, there's that type A leader mentality. So I can see how those things can actually be used for good. But we also have to remember the school system, you're not supposed to rate a scholastic achievement based on everyone on the same level playing field. What is this person gifted at? What is this person, where's their mind at? And that's why in the public school system, even 1620s, when it was created, they would let kids kind of develop and see what they're gifted for. Hardworking, farmer, accounting, numbers, mathematician, worship, music. And so I think that's one thing we kind of miss in the schools, is that we put everyone on this playing field that a lot of us can't really compete in. So I had to barely graduate high school, 1.8. And that was why too. Yeah. But then I can talk more about, what happened later on.
Well, talk to me a little bit about how your teachers responded to you. Did they even understand that you were having a little bit different challenge, or that you were even more creative than the other kids? And how did they help you or hinder you?
I think looking back, my mom, bless her heart, was probably challenged, like, Shanej, can't you just get this? But she was great. She was great. She helped with me at home. And I do remember I went to a Baptist school and then a public school and then a private high school. And I think my mom was trying to do that to see if that would help. But just, and the teachers, there's 30 kids. And so one thing I think that really harms children is that lack of one-on-one. If I could have went to my algebra teacher and said, I really don't understand. I have no clue what's going on here. You lost me the first week. And now we're 4 months into this, and geometry and numbers and even reading, my eyes will skip to the next sentence, and readings can be really challenging. And so I think they just went with the flow and barely graduated. Like, okay, we got to get Shanej through, poor kid, kind of stupid, dumb. But they don't realize that a lot of people who struggle with that are intellectually can be very smart, because once God brought the prodigal son back home and I devoted my life, Now I love to read, probably read 3, 4, 5 books a month, thousands of books in the last 23 years. And because there's also not a desire, because if it's hard to do and you're not getting it, there's no desire because there's no motivation. So now I'm motivated to learn more about God, more about theology. So I have to read things, maybe like go back, what was he trying to say? And so it's a little harder to read, and I hate reading in public at the church. I mean, I'd rather just have a sentence or two and then I can, speak on, like Charles Spurgeon did that a lot. But if I have to read a whole body of scripture, my mind is, my mind it's going ahead of me. And so it's almost like the dog said, sit down. You have to go real slow to capture each word, or else I'm already at the end. Maybe that has to do with my type A personality too, wanting to get through things. And so it's really still a challenge, but I love it because there's other giftings that come out of it, for sure.
One of the things I've shared in other videos is that, God gave us the brain parts to all work together, but we weren't born with a reading brain,
right,
like we were to see and hear. So people who have a different way of learning have to their brain has to be retrained. And we do a lot of work with music and play music in the left ear while words are going into the right ear through various ways, whether I'm speaking, whether it's my app that has spelling exercises on it. But literally, when kids have one-on-one intervention, and it's been proven that after a year of retraining the brain, an MRI will look the same as their MRI will look as like someone who doesn't have dyslexia. Right. So the brain is being retrained. Do you, so you mentioned that seeing the lyrics of like worship songs, the lyrics are struggling because there's those spelling and grammar tricks that you haven't learned. Right. That would be an obstacle. But what about music in general? Do you learn well when you're listening to background music, or do you listen to an earphone in your left ear or anything?
It's funny you said that. And I want to get right to that, but there's something it just popped in my mind, and I think it'd be important for people to know too. A lot of times over the years, like when I write books, and all my books are actually available as free downloads at westsidechristianfellowship.org. And people say, you have a gift to take complex things and bring them down to where just the normal average contractor business, just a stay-at-home mom, where they can understand it. So I think that's one thing, is because I can read and learn better something. I just give me the simple basic things. And so I can take, let's say, Charles Hodge on systematic theology and break down, okay, take 14 pages and say it in 4 paragraphs, but a real simple way that people can understand it. So my mind does do that. I can understand the complexity, but then it can come out in a simple type of way. And that's been a blessing to people too. So I think that's one thing. But back to the music. Yeah.
And that's our audience. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And with music, usually in the morning, I've been getting up, very early for the last 23 years by 3:34 in the morning. And that's my time. And I'll have worship on as I'm reading the Bible. And people are like, how do you do that? Yeah. I'm like, I don't know how that works, but it works. And sometimes if I take it out, it's almost like too quiet. My mind's kind of like, but I do it both ways, but it can really help listening to music, certain types of music, but also in church. A lot of people, I don't know why this is, but I can't look at the lyrics up on the screen. For some reason, trying to read them and concentrate takes me away from worship. So whenever we don't have lyrics on the screen, I'm happy. I'm fine with it. But then people say, where are the lyrics at? We need to put, and so I guess the way, I don't understand what that is. Maybe it is good because you can sing along with people, but if I have to read the sentence and then the next sentence and the next sentence, it's hard to actually worship for me. So I never look at lyrics ever, really.
And Shane and I talked about this earlier, that it's been on my heart for months that I could talk to somebody about that who was dyslexic, or parents who have kids in church that look at the screen. How do their kids feel, or how do the parents feel? Because if anybody would write in the chat to this YouTube, responding to that, because sometimes I would love to even take a song and break it down in a lesson on YouTube and show people this is how you sound these words out, because there's a lot of grammar tricks that need to be explicitly taught. That means directly taught one-on-one. Kids won't learn it from their peers. The teachers may teach it once or twice, but they need a lot of repetition with it. So Shane, I wanted to bring up some of those 10 things that you said that you read and that was you, because I know our audience is going to resonate with this too. But first I want to say with numbers, we call it dyscalculia. Okay. So with reading, we call that's the reading dyslexia. But typically dyslexic children will not want to raise their hands and volunteer to read, obviously. They don't like to be called on. And teachers really need to be mindful to prep a dyslexic child what they're going to read. Let them know the day before or even the morning before so that they can prepare what they're going to read. If you have, circular reading, they a lot of times will make excuses to leave when it's reading time. And I've had parents say they thought their child had a bladder infection because they always had to go to the bathroom so much, but it was always during reading time.
That's what I did.
The teacher and the kid admitted, I just didn't want to read. And then, of course, feeling embarrassed because auditory processing, the way the speed that our brain works when they hear something, they may answer a question after it's already been answered. And so the teacher moves on to question number 2, and the student's answering the first question. So there's a slowness in responding to teachers, and teachers need to be patient. They need to give the whole class thinking time and not only call on the first person who raises their hand. Right. Because dyslexic children are bright and they have the answers, but they need a little bit more processing time. And of course, a library is not a kid's best place to go. No, let's go to the library and have fun. And dyslexic children are like,
yes,
exactly.
Library. Well, I think too, you made a great point. What the benefit of reading it the day before is there's confidence. Okay, I've got this down. I've read it. I know what the story is. Now I can go and read with confidence versus throwing because what you're thinking about is I really don't want to mess up. Is what you're saying. And okay, you're reading every word and then, and that skips to the wrong sentence, or what I do is I see the word that's not there. Like if you see a word, like, let's say sovereignty, I'll say sanity. Or if you see a word, you could just jelly, I'll say, belly. It's I don't know why that is. Maybe you see something and
those are part of those characteristics. We say they will add and omit letters and syllables, and they'll glance and guess. So you may recognize the beginning of a multisyllabic word and just give it a whole nother word. But you have the first syllable. And changing that first letter, that's one of the exercises we give people. We intentionally change that first letter to see if they can sound the rest of the word out, like horse, H-O-R-S-E. We might say, have them read the word porse. Yes. And because they haven't memorized it, they don't know how to sound out porse. Right. So memorization.
And why are numbers such a challenge? Because even if my wife gives me like 5 digits, I can't remember those in order. I'll have to write them down. And even when I write them down, sometimes I'll write a 6 instead of the 3, even if it's just 5 digits. So numbers are like, wow. Yeah. It's I don't know, maybe it has to do with all of the other things too.
Well, yeah, I know a cashier at Stater Brothers who has dyscalculia, and she was so glad they had the scanner.
Oh, that would be What's funny, because I can tell my wife, remember last January or a year and a half ago in January, we were at your parents' house. We were both sitting on the couch and you got up to get some sparkling water. And then that's when you said that we, about vacation. And then I got up and then you said this, I brought you the magazine. It's like, how do you remember all that? But then I can't remember, here's a real quick, code to get in the door. And I just can't remember that. It's just interesting. So interesting.
Yeah, when I assess kids, one of the assessments is numbers. It's called the CTOP for the speech people out there. The CTOP has a subtest where kids have to repeat the numbers they hear, and they get longer and longer and longer. And I always had learned to chunk numbers in threes.
Yes. Yeah.
So that you
much
see
better.
them in groups. That's
Yeah.
the easiest strategy. Yeah, that's
And
very
be
interesting.
patient. And be patient. I think parents just being patient, because it's not that they're stupid or they're fighting it or they're rebellious. There's just a real big challenge, you know,
And there's
in their
nothing wrong
mind.
to using Post-it notes. I mean,
No,
yeah.
I got them all over the place. I've
Yeah.
got 3 on my computer with this, and up on my Bible. And, but the good thing is I'm probably 35-year class reunion or so. I don't remember. I graduated 1987, but all the top, 10 people, that, graduated or so, I would say, I'm as far as excelling, in ministry, and God is blessing the ministry. And it's once you get through life, the playing field is pretty level once you get out of high school, because now you can flourish as well.
And that's one of the things. I've had adults reach out to me because they're given a task in their jobs that work against dyslexia.
Sure.
A real recent person reached out to me that said their computer pops out the progress of everybody else. How are you doing? Jane's doing this, Tony's doing that. She's like, I don't want to hear how everybody's doing. I don't want to be compared. Maybe give it to me twice a day.
Yeah.
But if a dyslexic person is in a position where they're working with a lot of numbers or with a lot of words, they need to have an assessment so that their employer can be more gracious to them and give some accommodation to them.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
So we do assessments here. I do. And I think that's real important. Like you said, as you transition into adulthood, you find a career that works for you.
Yeah.
And
not accounting.
That's right.
Not accounting or a librarian or things like that, and why even spelling is still challenging today, and that's why my very first book was around 2000 actually. And my mom just, oh, bless her heart. She was great at math. She had a master's degree and wrote papers sometimes for the state of California. And man, she would just redline it, just tear it apart. And the first 3 or 4 books were painful because she was really editing most of it, cleaning it up, and I got a better writer as I progressed. But even today, if I just misspelled sovereignty yesterday. I couldn't remember how to spell sovereignty.
Yeah.
Or just there's so many words that you just forget how to spell them. And
we've had several adult dyslexics on that would talk about dyslexia hacks, using, Siri in your phone, or start talking in your phone and it tells you how to spell something. Even I do that.
I do too. Yeah.
It's a nice trick. How far did you go in school, Shane?
I just barely graduated high school with a 1.8. And,
that's right. Okay.
And people said, least likely to succeed. And I did turn, because of the self-esteem issues, I turned to alcohol at a young age. And so had to battle that throughout my 20s, finding that, now I'm the life of the party. And so this, alcohol made me this other person that wasn't this stupid Shane. And I was kind of overweight, so I was teased a lot. And that's why I got into health and fitness and bodybuilding. And you try to fix this, but you get into something that's not as good either. And so that's when I found my niche eventually ended up working for 24-hour fitness centers. I don't know if you've heard of those before, but became a district manager. Yeah, became a district manager. Even in your area, I had Pasadena and Glendale area for a while, Montrose, in that area for a while, just as a district manager. And so I was over sales and marketing and over all these employees. And then that's when God really grabbed my heart, and I got out of that and into writing and speaking too. I can't believe it. So for me, it's like God gets all the glory, all the credit. Someone like me should not be writing books, let alone speaking. And now God has got our messages are on 80 different radio stations across the United States. Tens of thousands of people hear it each week. And so God uses the least likely And once I humbled myself, submitted myself to him, and you can truly look back and say, he is really guiding me. But it's hard even public speaking, because, you can not stutter, but, a lot of rabbit trails, or your mind, you want to go somewhere, but your mind's going over here, and trying to stick with notes is hard. So I just have bullet points. It's like the skeleton, and I put clothes on it while I'm speaking, if that makes sense. Much better than a manuscript.
And I hope, Richard Andrew once said this about me. Are you guys hearing what he's saying? Look at the wealth of skill that God has given him.
Yes.
When I would share all that I was doing, Richard Andrew's mouth would just be going, and you guys aren't using her gifts and her talent. She's here for you. So you have, you're demonstrating how God does use your brain. I mean, the dyslexic people, 1 in 5 people has dyslexia or have
I didn't
dyslexia.
know that.
Yeah. So
wow. Okay.
I love when teachers can teach to the whole class as if everybody had a learning challenge, because all they have to do is teach phonics. Slow down, teach phonics, and it's structured. Well, the science of reading, we point out it's systematic, structured, sequential, cumulative, where everything and it has to be emotionally sound, where kids are feeling good about what they're learning. I tutor a young girl, a kindergartner, out of my home, and I love it. I get so excited to know that I'm going to help her. And I love when I see her grasp it. And I had another kindergartner in my home that really, really struggled with the basic concepts of kindergarten. Yeah. And so she's going to have a life of needing that one-on-one help. And
one-on-one is key for and I think I don't know if kids will listen to this, but parents can encourage them. You have to be the encouraging voice. Hey, don't worry about it. Reading's not great for everyone. Look at this pastor, how he grew up, or it's not, you don't have to follow Susie and Jack and Chrissy at school. God might have a different design for you. How you learn is different. And I think, and we see it at our own house, 2 of my daughters, they'll get up and do their own school for like 2 hours, where my son is more hands-on, working, got to build something. It's like complete. And my other daughter wants to work with animals, be a veterinarian. And so, training the child in the way they should go versus trying to make them all fit into this certain mold. You have to all learn the same way, because I learn really well with a certain way. And how school taught was not, it was just information overload. Like now I can look at the biology books and read about the mitochondria and the cell and the ATP and the how the cell works. But back then it was just like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and all this information versus just piece by piece. But I think kids need motivation too. It is hard for a kid to go read a boring book. Yes. And so my mom would say, maybe some ice cream if you get through all of this chapter, and write down the bullet points for me, or $5 once you read this whole book. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because it's a motivation of discipline, and you begin to develop discipline as you get older, and rewards, like a chore chart. And so I think you can tie it into that, make the book interesting and fun, but not put on too much at one time. Because with the dyslexia, I think I can feel overwhelmed pretty. No, I've got some strong shoulders, but if things are coming at me and you're trying to process things, you can feel overwhelmed, like just one chore at a time, one task at a time might be good for kids.
Yeah. I think about, I will wrap this up because I want to be sensitive to your time. But I'm thinking of being in the classroom, how we would have contests and give the rewards when dyslexic kids are competing against others, and you can't motivate out of dyslexia. Yeah. They can't change how they are. But you definitely could reward kids individually. Like you're saying, your mom rewarded you individually.
And I think too, looking back, I think we have to be careful, and I could be wrong here, correct me if I am for sure, because I'm not an expert on this, but it's definitely, I don't know what they would call it. I don't know if it's a disability, maybe some degree, a learning disability.
It's defined as a disability, but it's a learning difference is how we prefer to refer to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And instead of telling kids, well, you have this disability or you have this, versus you just learn different than this person, this person. It's just That's one thing, again, not to knock the school system, but when we have this model that everyone needs to fit into, but what about if Johnny does great out with the dandelions, learning about the how photosynthesis works and why the yellow, the pigmentation of the flower, and they're real hands-on, and they're going to learn a lot about biology outside with the flower, breaking it down versus in a classroom in a book. And so I think it's just the way you have to find out how the child can learn the best, how they've been designed.
Isn't that what makes a wonderful teacher? Is
absolutely
incorporating auditory, visual, kinesthetic. And it's not the child's problem if they don't learn, it's the teacher's problem by not knowing how to teach the kid.
And I remember that in biology, the professor would be up there, very smart. So he'd talk over me, but he explained the cell. Okay. And then, but when I can look and open and look at a cell and then look at the layer and how that lets in certain nutrients and the mitochondria and how it produces and now I'm very visual. Now I understand completely what he was trying to tell me without any visual aid. It didn't work. So I think dyslexia, those who have it, visual aids are absolutely important.
Yeah. Oh, this has been amazing. I just want to encourage the audience to look at some of Shane's books, even on health. I know we talk a lot about nutrition, the value.
We could even touch on that real quick if you want to.
For kids.
Yeah, because with attention deficit disorders and dyslexia, I don't know if this would really apply. In this sense, it could. A
lot of it overlaps. It's comorbid, we call it. So that's good.
So, and what I've learned in the health and fitness background is what we're feeding our kids can play a big role in their attention span. There's no reason a 7, 8, 9-year-old needs to be having caffeine, for example, or a Coke with 40 grams of sugar in it and artificial colorings and sweet. So we're seeing all these processed foods severely affect health and mood. I mean, serotonin is in the gut bacteria and the microbiome, and it's produced. And so I think we're doing the kids a lot of harm in addition to maybe misdiagnosing, but also not feeding them what the body actually needs. The body is a living, vibrant organism that needs living nutrients. Carrots dipped in hummus, not Captain Crunch. It will definitely affect your children's mood and their sleep pattern and their illness much more. Well, it will. See, there goes Dyslexia kicking in. Perfect example, right? It will affect them negatively when we don't feed them the types of food the body needs. And so I think a lot of times we're struggling with hard children, but if we would give the body what it needs, because the body from mental capacity to cognitive behaviorals to feeling good, mood swings, serotonin, all these things, food can really, really affect how we're feeling and how we perform.
And, parents need to remember that they're the ones in charge. I hear so many parents just say, well, I don't like the fight. They don't eat it. That, I don't want to argue with them. Parents, you need to step up and be in charge.
Well, what we have the same. Yeah, we have the same thing. And we just, if it's not at home, though, they're not going to eat it. They're only 8. They're not going to walk to the store. So if we take, orange juice and make it into a popsicle, or carrots and hummus and celery and peanut butter, almond butter, whatever's in the house, they're going to end up eating. And so we haven't mastered it. It is hard, but if you look at all the processed foods out there and what we're feeding our children, man, I don't know if you followed this, but they're very concerned up at top areas of the government on where this obesity crisis is going with our healthcare system and all-cause mortality and just everything is on an uptick, from cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and diabetes is health related. Diabetes is lifestyle related.
Yeah.
It's a disease that's caused by the choices I'm making. Now, people say, well, genetics, true, genes will load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. Mm. So and then epigenetics, I don't know if you've studied that much, but you can actually change your gene signals in your DNA based on exercise, consumption, breathing, the types of food your body is consuming can actually put the genes in your favor. So yes, your mom had cancer. It doesn't mean you're going to get cancer.
Yes.
necessarily. So yeah, we have to look at health and fitness big time, especially now in this next generation.
Thank you for that. You know, we have so much knowledge at our fingertips right now, and it's hard for parents to be reading and listening. But
Yeah,
if they listen to this, maybe they'll grab your book.
that's true.
And you know, if they could just have the rule, cut out the white sugar and cut out white flour. There's so many substitutes I've learned, you know, for almond flour.
And I'm going to actually, I don't know when they'll listen to this, but on May 13th, we're going live on our Facebook pages and Twitter and everything. I'm going to talk about this topic for 2 hours.
Oh,
and
amazing.
May 13th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And the top 10 things you really need to know, and you hit on it, is I let people know, is this a God-given food? Even meat and dairy and things like, is it a God-given food versus processed made in a factory? And so the whites and the sugars, these are all processed foods that we were never designed to consume at this level. And I don't want to get into all the details, but if you get rid of what is man-made in a factory and what is God creating, that there's life in that God created food. That's really, and that it is hard though, because you read organic crackers, but it's got safflower oil, canola oil, and refined oils are not good for the body at all. So you have to be a little strategic. We don't do it perfectly, you know, but we'll die trying, because our kids feel better and it's better for them and better for us as well. But if you go through our pantry, you know, there's things in there that probably aren't that great, you know, with some of the white pastas and crackers and things, but, you know, trying to find that healthy balance.
Yeah, with Easter coming, I have a gal in my community who makes keto Easter candy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Just with monk fruit and, you know, the erythritol. I just learned about these, you know, plant-based sweeteners.
Well, that's, I mean, you hit a good point. Maybe leave the parents with this too. We are in a surplus of carbohydrates right now. I mean, we're just consuming too many carbohydrates. And you can look 100 years ago, nobody was really overweight, but they moved a lot more. You know, they would walk 5 miles, or they would do this on the farm working. And so we have to be careful and strategic with the types of foods we eat now, especially, you know, I remember when I was in construction as a young kid, I could eat 6,000 calories a day. And, you know, 18, 19 years old, but now I gotta stay way under that, because I'm just not moving as much. And if the body doesn't move, we have to be strategic and things. But anyway, yes, they can download my books on health and fitness for free downloads at westsidechristianfellowship.org. That would help out, or at least help them go in the right direction.
Okay. Well, this has been an amazing time with you.
I loved it. Thank you, Dr. Marianne. Awesome job.
I just want to let people know, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. If what we have shared has helped you and blessed you, would you be sure you click like and subscribe? And if you're able to make a donation to the nonprofit, that would be amazing. Any amount would help. I want you to know that I have my app, CDSM, is available for free now on Android and iOS. It plays classical music in the left ear and my voice speaking spelling exercises in the right ear. So it's got stereo going on there, and you can buy the words themselves that are in the spelling list on Teachers Pay Teacher. If you look under the Orton Gillingham subject with my name, Dr. Marianne Cintron, and I have my training videos available, some for purchase and some are just free if you want to go on to Dyslexia Solutions under YouTube. So Pastor Shane, thank you so much for being our special guest.
It was so cool. I hope it helped some people. I'm sure it did. Thank you so much.
I'm sure it will. Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.